today's SkillsQuest, we are going to be focusing on how to communicate your research. So how to go about preparing for a research presentation or an oral defense, which some of you may be experiencing in the near future. And we can start our first talk. Before that, we will be recording this session so that we can distribute the recordings later. If you do not want to be recorded, just feel free not to turn on your camera. And we will be starting the recording now. Okay, again, welcome to SkillsQuest Communicating Your Research. And to introduce our first speaker, our first speaker is Noreen Gonda. And Noreen is our speaker for presentation and oral defense tips. She has vast experience in research and oral defense presentation from regional to national level during her high school years. She was also active in journalism and was awarded the Philippines' second best news presenter in 2018. And currently she is a pharmacy student, a fourth-year BS pharmacy student at the University of Makati, and she is a holder of the Associate of Applied Science in Pharmacy Technology and Bachelor of Pharmaceutical Marketing. She recently joined a national patient counseling competition where she was able to grab the second runner-up prize. She is now one of the developers of an immunization tracker called PH Facts Track. And aside from research, Noreen also loves dancing and blogging, where she promotes the mixture of arts and science by featuring the unfiltered life of a pharmacy student. And she actually is here, but she pre-recorded her talk, which we will be playing now. If you have any questions, feel free to send them in the chat anytime or to wait until after the presentation.
Hello, magandang gabi. Good evening to all, especially to our mentees. Hi, I am Noreen Gonda. So oral presentation or defense is maybe one of the nerve-wracking parts of doing research, right? Everyone involved in research, like high school, college, and even graduate students, they have to pass this hurdle to say that his or her research is a success. So why do you think? Because your research must be challenged. It should be challenged in different perspective, and the public has to know about your research. Thus, your presentation or oral defense skill must be developed, which boils down to your communication skills. So, magkadikit talaga sila. And if you're here, I thank you for that. You are on your way on stepping up your game. Before we take a leap, let's look at your foundation first, right? Let's go back to the basic of communication. So this will not only be helpful in preparing for your upcoming presentation, but they will also help you in reading people in any given situation. So there are two types of communication. We have the verbal communication and the non-verbal communication. So verbal consists of getting your message across using sounds, words, and language, while non-verbal involves unsaid things like the eye movement, the body language, and the tone of your voice. So I think I will not explain it anymore because these are self-explanatory. So to have an effective communication, you should answer this following questions. First, what? So what is your content? What's the content of your presentation? So let's make my presentation as an example first. So my content is about presentation and oral defense tips. Number two, when? So I am giving this presentation at night, so I expect that people or the audience are kind of sleepy na, di ba? Number three, where. So in our case, it is online. I think it's Zoom. And the number four is who. So my target audience are Filipinos, so I can use Tagalog. Our mentees, which are high school students, but we also have mentors here. Number 5 is why. So the reason why I'm giving this presentation is I hope that you will improve your skills through my tips and my experiences. And all these W's, these 5 W's will affect our how. So my strategy for tonight is to make this presentation as lively and enjoyable as possible para hindi naman kayo makatulog, di ba? And I hope that it will be a light discussion but full of learnings. You need to remember these simple questions and you will see the difference between a research presentation and a simple classroom presentation, a research defense between a simple conversation or a debate. So here are the tips or questions that you have to answer to develop that presentation and oral defense skills. Tip number 1, para kanino ka bumabangon? Hindi po to sponsor pero baka naman. So our researches are the product of our hard work. So we want to communicate it to the world exactly what we want to. So the topics we chose also reflect our interests and our passion. So that's most of the time naman. That also affects our reason for presentation. Tanggalin na natin yung mindset na ang research is merely a requirement. Our researches are for the people, for the community. So dapat maparating natin sa kanila yon. Tip number 2, mindset ba mindset? May mga tao na they are very scared to talk to many people and that's understandable. But most of those people, they're not actually afraid to talk and they know the research well. The problem is they are just afraid to make mistake and to be ridiculed. According to Mel Abraham, the author of The Entrepreneur Solution, fear is paralyzing. It blinds the mind's capacity. So my solution is to jump and don't overthink when you're doing presentation. Jump on the lines then and figure it out from there. Mindset nga, diba? So you want to challenge yourself by going there and then present and then bahala na. Pero bawal yung ganung mindset, yung bahala na. But you need to prepare. But my point here is that don't be blinded sa fear ninyo na mag-present. You know, ganun din ako dati. I have a little confidence on myself, but little by little, I learned how to be confident. Yes, natututunan naman siya. How to be presentable. So how you should look, how you should poise, how you should be decent in presenting, etc. And how to control your emotions when presenting. During, after, even before presenting, you should be able to control that. So you will never know those feelings unless you tried it. So my technique when I'm too nervous, I don't know if this will work for you, I pace. Naglalakad-lakad ako. So that's my way of tricking my mind na hindi nagpa-pound yung heart ko ng mabilis dahil kinakabahan ako but dahil naglalakad ako or nag-exercise ako. I also sometimes play games right before the presentation so that I can divert my attention dun sa kaba ko. So just to show you yung mga pictures, so this one is when we joined UST RISE. So RISE is Regional Invention Conference and Exhibit in 2015. So that was on Palawan, Puerto Princesa, Palawan. And then this UP Alchems 2017 in University of the Philippines, Diliman. And then we have this UST RISE 2017. This one is in Romblon. So as you can see, I came from Regional Science High School from Mimaropa. So most of my researches dun lang siya sa Mimaropa. Umiikot lang kami doon. But sometimes I also join yung mga national competition. And then we have this in UMAC 2019. College na ako nito. UMAC is University of Makati. Tip number 3. Handa ka na ba? So before the presentation, you should brainstorm. What are the questions that are more likely that will be asked? Because you want to prepare your answer for those questions. Dapat may pre-made answers ka na. You can also practice by presenting it to your classmates or anyone that has no knowledge in your study para fresh yung perspective. Then prepare a script or a flow. But I suggest na flow lang and here's the reason why. If you ever joined a convention or an exhibit na face-to-face, you probably know by now that you will not only be going to present to judges or experts, but you will also going to present sa mga local journalists, people who have little to no knowledge on your research, and even co-exhibitors ng mga estudyante. Marami yan paikot-ikot lang. That's why na dapat hindi ka nagre-rely on memorization ng script mo. Dapat may flow ka lang. Dapat may intro ka, body, and conclusion na dapat mong masabi when you are presenting. Because ang type kasi na pag mga nasa exhibit ka or public exhibit and convention ka, it's like an ambush interview lang ng mga pumupunta sa booth. So in here, if you can see the DOST Rise 2015, it's not me, it's my high school classmate. Wala kasi akong makitang picture ko. But ganito exactly what will happen during the convention or exhibits. There will be random people asking your booth about your research, and as an exhibitor, of course, you need to present regardless of who they are. Just be careful lang. This is like a street tip. Because there are cases, very rare lang naman, na those people go to booth para mang-stole ng ideas. So some people will record you, video you. So just be very cautious when you are giving information. Know kung ano yung mga information na dapat mong i-protect. Just give those information if talagang sila yung mga panelists ninyo. Also, you need to patent your study immediately if you joined a public convention. May mga DOST staff naman na lumilibot, especially if it is a DOST event. So you need to ask lang sa mga paperworks doon. So this is what most conventions looks like. So dapat flexible ka talaga to adapt in your environment. As you can see, super daming tao, and actually mixed siya, hindi lang siya high school. Meron din siya sa mga college, and even yung mga nagtatrabaho na talaga sa industries. So again, this was way back in 2015 pa. So napakasaya ng mga face-to-face exhibits, and I hope na mas maranasan nyo sila. So yung tone of your voice and yung mga non-verbal communication dapat nandun pa rin. You should never forget that. I'm kind of highlighting this kind of presentation because once you experience this and overcame this type of exhibits and convention and presentation, magiging easy-peasy na lang yung mga classroom research presentation. And I hope you're getting more excited rather than nervous sa mga pinapakita kong pictures. Tip number 4. Ano ang bag mo? Nagugutom na ba kayo? I hope nakapag-dinner na kayo. Sarap ang pancit canton ngayon. So this is applicable in group presentations and defense. So maybe you notice for most of my researches, I'm in a group, hindi ba? And I can say na it is harder to present and answer questions when you are in a group. So ang common problem would be the difficulty in assigning which task is appropriate for a member, which lead to some disagreement, right? So nag-aaway-away kayo. My tip, especially for leaders, is to know yung members' strengths and weaknesses. So the process of oral presentation, as I said in my previous tip, requires preparation. Hindi ito yung pupunta ka lang sa harap, then magsasalita ka, hindi ba? You need to prepare the PowerPoint, the product for the demo, the flow, how to present it properly, etc. So whatever your research requires, marami siya. There are a lot of work going behind oral presentation and research defense themselves. So dapat behind the scene pa lang, you have collaboration na talaga. Next is during the presentation, it is very common for researchers in a group to wait for another member to answer the question. Not because they don't know the answer, but either they are shy or just expect someone should answer it. And in the perspective of panelists, yung mga moments of silence like that shows that you are unprepared and you do not know your study well. And also yung harmony nyo as a group, wala. So it will also end na at the end of the defense or the presentation, you will find yourself blaming one another na, dapat ikaw yung sumagot, alam mo pala yung answer etc. So my solution to that is to assign a specific topic of expertise to a member. For example, ikaw, Noreen, methodology ka. If there will be questions asked related to methodology, I am the first person to or expected to answer those questions. And when there's already like 5-second moment of silence, it means that I do not know the answer. So the other researchers can answer if if she or he knows the answer. So this will also avoid yung mga unnecessary overlapping of answers, yung mga pabida-bida mode, because hindi rin good impression. It is like kapag sa mga drug treatment, hindi ba? There's always a drug of choice. May mga first line and then second line na dapat sinusunod. So it's like the same logic. But of course, every members should have a general knowledge about your research and participation in every part of your study. Also, hindi rin may iwasan that sometimes your co-member will be impulsive and provide a wrong answer. But please, bawal pabibo. As a team, you should show harmony and collaboration. But of course, you should need to provide the right answer. But make it yung correction very subtle lang. For example, you can use yung mga phrase like, if I may add, or yes, that was our previous method because etc. But we realized that this particular method is better, so we use that. Yung mga ganong type of phrases that will not make the other member bad or very wrong. Again, sabi nga ni Mel Abraham in his book, that The Entrepreneur's Solution, collaboration is less of a control and more of a brain power. Have trust to one another and make everyone feel that you got each other back. So now that you are prepared, I will give you some tips on what you should do during your research presentation. So tip number 5, aura. So these tips are actually not from me, but from Dale Carnegie, which I read in his book entitled How to Win Friends and Influence People. And ever since I read this book, I have always applied these top 3 tips from its chapter entitled 6 Ways to Make People Like You. Parang ang loner lang, di ba, ng title. But 6 ways siya, pero 3 lang yung sasabihin ko kasi I think ito lang applicable in our discussion. Tip number 5.1, practice a default smile. So go in front of your mirror and then smile. Para lang kayong baliw, pero you should know kung ano yung feeling ng default smile mo. Kasi sometimes there are people talaga na may mga quote-unquote resting bitch face. But when you are a presenter, you should be able to control that and have a default smile. So practice nyo lang yon. Because a smile is contagious. It just makes everyone feel better. And when the aura, the vibe is good, your panelists will also be in a good mood. So there it will make yung defense nyo lighter and less pressure. So fun lang. Tip number 5.2, call their names. Similar explanation lang to the previous one. It just makes the vibe that you are close. Yes, yes, Miss Noreen. That's right, etc. So you should put them at ease. Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. It's just show kasi na you give importance and you are very attentive. Hindi ka lang very focused on your research, but you're also focusing on the relationship and communication going sa paligid mo. Tip number 5.3, make them feel important and do it sincerely. Hindi dapat parang fake because they can see through you. If the panel is talking, do an nonverbal approach like nodding. Show na you're listening. And you can also say yung mga verbal approach like, yes, I agree, and yes, we will take note of that, etc. And to our last tip number 6, seryoso yarn. Papunta pa lang tayo sa exciting part. So do you remember this video that went viral in TikTok? So let's just watch it for a minute.
Especially to all of the panelists, advisors, and especially to our co-researchers who attend this virtual conversation. So, good afternoon everyone. Before we formally start the presentation proper, allow us first to introduce ourselves. I am Rayjon Langkino Tutor.
I'm Ellen Ido.
I'm Princess Juliet A. Matuginas.
And I'm Vanessa Baisa.
And we are the researchers. This afternoon, we are going to present our research proposal entitled The Creative Development of a Casual Dress into an Evening Gown. So, let's begin!
So let's begin. It received a lot of constructive criticism, telling na pageant style of presenting is not appropriate for a research presentation. Do you agree on that? Does research presentation have to be serious? I'll give you a 5 moment of silence to ponder and think that. So I actually experienced a similar scenario. When I was in first year college, we presented a project or a study in a very enthusiastic way. As in sabay-sabay kami nagsasabi ng name of our product. And our panel told us na this is not how a research presentation should be. Actually yung verbatim niya is hindi na kayo high school, bakit ganito yung type of presentation niyo, hindi dapat ganito. So while there always a certain level of formality in terms of research presentation, that's actually what make or one of the characteristic ng isang research presentation that take it apart from a normal classroom presentation. Remember yung 5 W's and H, right? You should always analyze yung context. Who are you presenting for? What is the content? Why, where, when? And then it affects your how. For me, research presentation and oral defense are like selling. They both should give facts and must provide value. They also need to convince the audience that it is significant, and they should influence them to take action. Action that will open opportunities and encourage investments and research improvement and even publication. Without that action, do you think you can say that your research presentation was a success? Iyon ba ay para lang makausad ka or para lang matapos yung research presentation because you have to present? Without those action, again, will you say that your research presentation is a success? Research presentation has a certain minimum standard, which is by answering again the 5 W's and H. But we also encourage creativity. Before we end, I would like to recommend these 3 books that you should read. And it will not only help you in research presentation, but also in your life. They will teach you more about the psychology of people and how to handle your emotions to achieve your goal. So this is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, The Entrepreneur's Solution by Mel Abraham, and Never Split the Difference or Negotiating as If Your Life Depended on It by Chris Voss. So there are actually I think mga soft copies online and even audiobooks in YouTube, so you can utilize that. But if you have no time reading a whole book, yes, magpo-promote, you can visit my website where I publish some book summaries and highlights. So that's noreengonda.wordpress.com. And that's it. I hope you learned something from me and I apply it next time when you conducted your presentation and research defense. Again, action is more important, okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Noreen, for preparing that very engaging and very practical tips for our students. Now we will be taking questions. Feel free to type it in the chat or to raise your hand and unmute if you have any questions for Noreen. Siguro while we're waiting, maybe people are still typing. I had one question. So a lot of your presentations were offline, and maybe you have experienced online presentations then because of the pandemic. What would you say are the differences, and like, are there extra things that people need to think about when they're presenting, like online versus offline?
Hello. Actually, for me, yung online is less intimidating compared to face-to-face. Actually, I think mas nag-improve yung confidence ko when it was uh, offline compare sa online. But yun nga, may mga disadvantages kapag online kasi nga, the internet connection, just like what I am experiencing right now. And also, you don't know yung mga non-verbal, especially if yung mga kausap mo is not, open cam, and you don't know what they're thinking, and ikaw lang yung nakikita nila. So, yung mga non-verbal communication is not there. So, you should always focus on what you're presenting. Siguro, I think when you're presenting online, dapat mas focus ka sa appearance mo, sa what you're presenting, and not be intimidated dun sa mga hindi mo nakikita kapag online. Ayun lang po.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from our audience? Okay, we have one question in the chat. Up to what extent can you admit that you don't have the answer to a certain question?
I think when answering a research or present, like in the defense, the honesty is the best policy talaga. Like if you don't know the answer to that presentation, you just need to say it. Like, apologies, we did not able to consider that question or that aspect. So we would like to add that in my recommendation, like that. If your question is at what extent, I don't like suggest like yung parang you try to cover if you have parang pagkukulang in your research. For me, you should just be honest on your shortcomings and try to improve that and accept those recommendation or opinions. I hope I answer your question.
Thank you, Noreen, and thank you for that question. Do we have any other questions? Siguro last call for questions natin. Okay, I think we don't have any questions as of now. If you have any questions, you can always send a chat here or send an email to SIDHI, and we will do our best to get your questions answered. Thank you again, Noreen, for your wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you din, Sidhi, and thank you to the audience.